Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Saturday, December 28th, and we are just a little over 24 hours away from the New York Jets Week 17 matchup on the road against the Buffalo Bills. It is another week, and we've got another preview pod for you today. As always, though, before we dive into this week's matchup, we got to get to our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at BetUS. Let's take a look at this week's games, odds, lines, presented by BetUS. The New York Jets come into this one plus 9.5 on the road, minus 120 spread. So they are the road dogs. And the Bills, no surprise, 9.5-point favorites, even on the spread. Jets plus 320 on the money line. Bills minus 400 on the money line. And the total for this one is set at 47. If you want to get in on this game's action or any other sports betting action, check out BetUS and use my link in the description of this video to get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Also, our friends over at SeatGeek, if you're looking for last-minute tickets to this game or any sporting event or any event that needs and it's your first time using SeatGeek, check it out and use my promo code BUBSONSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase and get out to some awesome events. And, of course, also our friends over at Huga House. If you want any of their awesome selection of hats, make sure to check them out. And at checkout, use promo code BUBS for 15% off any purchase. And when you use that code and you get 15% off your first hat, you get 30% off your second hat. So definitely check them out and get yourself some awesome Huga House swag. So here we are, another week, another New York Jets game preview. As always, just a couple quick numbers before we get into this one. The Jets come into this matchup 4-11 on the season, 2-6 on the road. The Bills come into this 12-3 on the season and a perfect 7-0 at home. So they will look to complete their home slate in the 2024 season by going undefeated at home, 8-0 if they come out on top in this one. Tomorrow, 1 Eastern, CBS. You take a look at ESPN Analytics matchup predictor. The Jets are given a 28.8% chance of winning this game, and the Bills are given a large 71% chance of coming away with the victory. So obviously, odds are stacked against the Jets in this one and stacked heavily in favor of the Buffalo Bills. Here we are, another game, another week. And, it's just another one of these games as a Jet fan where you wish, when this season started, you looked at the slate and you saw these final 2 games of the season, really these final couple games of the season, right? You saw the Rams, you even saw the Bills and the Dolphins, final 2 games of the season, and you thought to yourself, man, those could potentially be big divisional matchups, whether it's going on the road in Buffalo and potentially having that game be something meaningful for either playoff positioning or the division. And then you close out the year against Miami, which you think to yourself, could that be a scenario where we got with the Dolphins last year where you're win the division, all that stuff. But here we are. Instead, we got ourselves a same old typical type of Jets season. You've got a 4-11 Jets team that is just looking and limping down into the finish line, just looking to get to the offseason, find your new GM and new head coach. And you've got a Bills team that is firing on all cylinders right now. And it's crazy to think the last time these two teams met, how much has changed since. And that's really where I kind of want to start, is before we even get to the injury report and everything like that. The last time these two teams met, I think it just perfectly encapsulates what type of season it has been and how different it's been for a 12-3 Jets team and a 4-11 Jets team. Almost completely different, right? One more loss for the Jets, and these two teams would be the complete opposite record of each other, or one less win for the Bills and you'd be a complete 180. But these two teams met week 6, October 14th. That was Jeff Ulbricht's first game as the head coach of the New York Jets, as the interim head coach after Robert Saleh got fired that Tuesday. Ulbricht got named the interim. They played that Monday, and in that game was obviously an awful loss by the Jets. Greg Zuerlein missing 2 big field goals. You had the Aaron Rodgers Hail Mary. There was a lot of things that actually went well in that game. The first game of Todd Downing taking over the play calling duties, but it was one of those losses where it was lost on the leg of Greg Zuerlein, one of the many one-score losses the Jets have been a part of this year. And what's crazy about what has happened since that game is the Jets went into that game 2-3. The Bills were 3-2. That game that night was for first place in the division. We were all saying it. I remember coming on to this podcast and saying everything that's gone on, firing Robert Saleh, losing, your last 2 games against Denver and Minnesota, everything that has gone wrong up to that point to be 2-3, you've got a chance to take over the division lead. Jets don't do it. Since that point, the Jets are 2-8. Bills walked out of there with a win. Since that point, including that game, are 9-1. And here we are, 4-11 Jets, 12-3 Bills. Ulbricht 2-8 as a coach, started that night. And here we meet again, week 17. And it's a Bills team that's clicking and firing on all cylinders. And it's a Jets team on another week of draft watch for many of you. The Jets come into this 9th pick in the draft. And I think what's funny is Greg Zuerlein is expected to kick in this game. So his first game back is going to be against the Bills, which was one of his worst games he had this year, earlier in the season, of course, against Buffalo, where he missed 2 crucial field goals, including one of them being a doink. So that's where we stand heading into this one. Injury report for this game. Jets are pretty loaded. Lucky Fotu, they opened up his 21-day practice window. He'll still miss the game with a knee injury, though. Nobody doubtful, but a lot of questionable players in this one. Devontae Adams is questionable with a hip. Tony Adams with an ankle. Michael Carter II with a back injury. Sauce Gardner with a hamstring. Braden McGregor with an ankle. Morgan Moses with a knee, Hassan Reddick with a neck, Quinn Williams with a hamstring, and of course Zuerlein is questionable with the left knee, but Ulbricht said yesterday he expects him to play. He will be their kicker. Anders Carlson had a very rough week last week, so they go back here to the veteran who has had a really poor season prior to going on IR. As for the Bills injury report, pretty clean. Nobody out, nobody doubtful, just a couple players questionable. Damar Hamlin dealing with a rib injury, Cam Lewis dealing with a shoulder, Taylor Rapp dealing with a neck. Curtis Samuel, also similar to Damar Hamlin, is dealing with ribs. So we'll see how many of those guys are out there tomorrow afternoon out in Orchard Park for this Week 17 showdown. So let's get right into this one. Let's not waste any more time. Let's take a deep dive and dive into the Jets offense, Bills defense, all that good stuff, what to look for, what to watch for, matchups, all that good stuff. In this matchup, the second to last one here, of what has been a miserable regular season for the Jets. Jets come into this one with the 23rd total ranked offense in football, 31st rushing offense, 17th passing offense, 24th scoring offense. They go up against a Bills defense that has had some struggles. It feels like this season they've kind of been average at best. They've had a lot of different players. They've had a lot of injuries. There's been a lot of moving parts. So some of that could be played into it. Some of that could be a factor as to why they've struggled this year, but they're 23rd in total defense. So you've got the 23rd ranked offense against the 23rd ranked defense. So we'll see which unit kind of comes out on top in this one. The 14th ranked rushing defense in football, 25th against the pass, and 13th in scoring defense. So definitely not the strength of their team. Definitely something that they've struggled with this year. Rodgers dealing with the injury. Knee has popped up again. It felt like after Ulbricht spoke to the media on Tuesday, there might be some doubt that he would play. Rodgers met the media about an hour or two later. He usually meets the media on Wednesdays, but obviously with the holiday, he meets the media a day earlier. He obviously said that I'm playing all 17. I'm out there on Sunday. So Rodgers will play. How mobile, how healthy does he look? It'll be interesting. Obviously, he's looked a lot healthier recently, took the sack against the Rams, the only sack he took that game, and was clearly banged up, went to the blue tent, even to the point where Tyrod Taylor started to warm up on the sideline. So it's happened many times this year where Rodgers gotten banged up in games. So you interested just to see how he looks tomorrow because he's looked healthy recently. Does he look more back to where he was like after that Minnesota game, the Denver game where he got banged up? Something to look for. On the season, Rodgers has completed 333 of 530 passes attempt, 62.8 completion percentage, 3,511 yards, 6.6 yards per completion, 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, a 90.8 passer rating, and a 52 QBR. In the first meeting between these two teams, Rodgers went 23 of 35 for 65.7%, 294 yards, 8.4 yards per completion, 2 touchdowns, a pick, a 99 passer rating, and a 57.4 QBR. For those of you that are still heavily invested into this whole Aaron Rodgers 6-game window that we've talked about, right? We went back and said that Seattle game onward. After the bye week, Seattle, Miami, Jacksonville, Rams, Bills, Miami next week. How would he look? Updated after last week, this is a guy that in his last 4 games has thrown 7 touchdowns, just 1 pick, 1,069 yards. Could potentially finish out, depending on how big of a day he has, with the most touchdown passes in a month this season since October. He had 10 in October. If he goes out there tomorrow and has a big day, could potentially hit 10. So we'll see how all that plays out. But 95.7 passer rating over the last couple games. And sack-wise has been protected very well. Only 7 sacks this month in 4 games compared to 10 sacks in September and October. He even took 6 sacks in the 2 games they played in November. So has been protected a lot more here. And look, I've said this many times with Rodgers. It's ultimately got to come down to the head coach and the general manager, what they want to do with him. It can't be Woody. And I will have a podcast up on this potentially today. Not sure exactly when, but I plan on getting an episode up on a comment made by Rich Cimini about Rodgers' chances of returning, and why he might not return is because of Woody Johnson and his relationship, which should not matter. The owner, Woody Johnson, should not be getting involved in anything Aaron Rodgers related. I've said this multiple times. We've all said this multiple times. Woody Johnson could not force Aaron Rodgers on any coaching staff. Woody Johnson also can't take away Aaron Rodgers from any coaching staff. At the end of the day, wherever you stand on Aaron Rodgers, you need to have the football people making the football decisions. If Mike Vrabel and let's say Thomas Dimitroff come in here and want Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback, then you bring Rodgers back because your football people want him. If they don't want him back, then you move on. That's how it is. So we'll see how that all plays out. If I had to guess, I don't think Rodgers is returning. I think he's saying a lot of the right things right now to potentially make the Jets look bad when all of this is said and done. I also think Rodgers is trying to say all the right things to maybe prove to other teams that he's willing to be open to a lot of things, mentoring a young quarterback, because you can make the case that Rodgers might need the Jets more than the Jets need Rodgers at this point in his career. When you look around the league, how many other teams would really want to take in a guy of Rodgers' stature, 41 years old, everything that comes with him, all the baggage, the salary, all that stuff? It'll be interesting. So 16th game for Rodgers this season tomorrow. We'll see what he looks like, but it feels like this could be the final 120 minutes of football we see him in a uniform. But you never know. See how that all plays out. But, of course, he's a main guy to look for tomorrow, especially how healthy he looks after clearly getting banged up last week against the Rams. Another thing I'm interested in seeing tomorrow is this running game. I want to just see one game, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's next week, where they just we see this running game kind of take over and dominate a little bit. Too many times this year have we seen Rodgers drop back 35, 40 times, just throw 13, 14, 15 passes to Devontae Adams. I mean, last week, Aaron Rodgers was basically, and of course he is going for his 500th touchdown in this game, which I'm sure he'll hit. But last week it was basically the Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams show. You know, this week, can we see a little bit more Breece Hall? Can we see a little bit more Braylon Allen on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1? Right, last week they go for it on 4th and 1. I like the play call. Why is Braylon Allen not in the game? That's the short yardage situation that he's got to be utilized in. So I want to see hopefully the run game tomorrow get going a little bit. It's going to be nice, but it's going to be windy, potentially affects the Jets through the air. Could be a big run day. It's possible. This is also a Bills defense that is 14th against the run, so they are slightly above average, but it's a defense that has struggled this year. If there was a game where, especially when you look at the Jets offensive line right now with Olu Fashanu and Greg Rousseau storming off that edge against Carter Warner, Max Mitchell, to get to here in a second, could cause some problems for Rodgers, who is, of course, dealing with an injury. If you can go out there tomorrow and run the ball a little bit, show some physicality. Let's see some Breece Hall. Right? Breece this year has got 187 carries for 774 yards, 4.01 yards per carry, and 5 touchdowns. He's 20th in carries, 24th in yards, and tied for 29th in touchdowns. Not nearly the numbers that he should have or you expect him to have. On the year, receiving and rushing, he's got 1,234 all-purpose yards. He should be much more higher than that. He's only had 16 carries at most in games this year. Do you see a 20-carry performance from Breece tomorrow? Do you see a little bit more Braylon Allen in short yardage situations? I think the run game's something to keep an eye on. I'm just so sick of every single week us win or lose tomorrow, whatever the heck happens. Win or lose against Miami, whatever the heck happens. Can you see a game where Breece kind of takes over a little bit? Can you see a game, even if Breece not 100%, you don't want to run him a ton, which I agree with? Can we see a game where you utilize Braylon Allen in those short yardage situations, 4th and 1, you put him out there and you keep it simple and you just hard-nosed football, just lower your shoulder and pick up 2 to 3 yards? Can we see that? I mean, this is a team that's averaging 88.7 rush yards per game, which is 31st in the NFL, only better than the Las Vegas Raiders, who are awful and are completely stripped of talent. So, something to look for tomorrow, this run game. Just got done talking about Rodgers. But how much more Breece Hall? What does Breece Hall look like? I thought Breece Hall last week probably looked, some of those runs probably looked the most healthy he's looked in a couple weeks. See if he can take another step tomorrow. Obviously, Garrett Wilson's a big talking point as well. The targets, the losing, all that stuff. I think it's more so the losing. I mean, it's a guy that's been targeted the 4th most times in the NFL. He's also 10th in the NFL in receptions. So I think it's more so the losing than it is not being targeted, because the whole target argument doesn't make a ton of sense because he's been targeted a lot. I think it's just he's sick and tired of losing. I think he's also sick and tired of every single season there are questions around the quarterback, right? Even when you thought you finally had stability with Rodgers, here we are again talking about his future. And I think Garrett's done with that. I think he's done with, after his rookie year, you had questions about they need a new quarterback. Then last year, you have all those questions during the season at quarterback. Different, Boyle, all those guys. Now this year, even in a full season of Rodgers, you've still got questions. So I think he's sick of that more. When you look at his numbers on the year, 90 receptions, 987 yards, 11 yards per reception, and 6 touchdowns. He's tied for 20th in touchdowns, 12th in yards, 10th in receptions. Couple milestones here. We talked about Rodgers trying to get his 500th touchdown. Couple other milestones. Garrett Wilson needs just 13 receiving yards to hit 1,000 for his 3rd straight season, which hasn't been done by a Jets receiver since 1966 to 1968. George Sawyer. Devontae Adams also only needs 72 receiving yards in this game to get to 1,000 for his 4th straight season and 6th time in the past 7 seasons as well. Some other stuff on Garrett. He needs just 10 receptions to get to 100 and 6 to surpass his previous career high set last year of 95. He also needs 117 yards to get to a new career high, which would be 1,105. So, a couple statistical milestones to look for there tomorrow. Also interested to see just the target share between Garrett, Lazard, and Devontae. You want to give Devontae targets, okay. Still, some of those targets should be going to Garrett. The biggest thing is Lazard should not be targeted 7-8 times tomorrow. Lazard's targets should go to Garrett. And it should just be Garrett and Devontae leading the way with maybe a slight mix of Conklin in there as well. But we'll see. It's the Jets. You never know. They haven't gotten it right all year. We talk about the offensive line. No Olu, so more than likely it will be Max Mitchell and Carter Warren, which is a massive, massive drop-off. Carter Warren in year 2 has shown you nothing. Max Mitchell in year 3 has shown you nothing. If anything, it feels like these guys are getting worse. It's just like, it's crazy. Between the drop-off between what we saw from Morgan Moses to Carter Warren this year was major. What you see from Olu to Mitchell and Carter Warren is major. I mean, Mitchell's been inactive a couple times this year. Not even active in some of these games. And you might be asking him to start tomorrow. So that could be a recipe for disaster, especially against a player in Greg Rousseau of the Bills, coming off that left side edge. 50 tackles on the year, 7.5 sacks, 23 quarterbacks hits, and 16 tackles for loss. His 7.5 sacks lead the team. His 23 quarterback hits are a career high. They also lead the team. And he's got 16 tackles for loss, which are also a career high and lead the team. So in many areas, he's not a huge sack guy, but he's a pressure guy. He's got a very high win rate. He's got a good pressure percentage. He gets the quarterback. He's around the quarterback. He's also somebody to look for as a run stopper because he can do both well. And he's a very complete player. And that's something, too, that there is a drop-off there. Olu, as much as pass pro is his strength, he got better with run blocking as the year went on, as his starts continued to grow. So Mitchell and Warren is going to be a major difference. And we got spoiled for a couple weeks of good offensive line play, but as the Jets, we can't have nice things. Thankfully, though, Olu's injury is only these next 2 weeks, couple weeks to recover, and he'll be fine for next year and all the offseason stuff with the plantar fasciitis. But tomorrow could be a day of Rodgers trying to run a lot more. Also, are we going to see Malachi Corley tomorrow? Probably not, but got to bring him up anyway because that's where we are. All right, moving on to the defense, the Jets defense versus Bills offense. This is a Jets defense that ranks 4th total in the NFL, 16th against the run, 5th against the pass, 16th in scoring defense. It's a Bills offense that is elite, top 10 in everything. Tons of credit obviously goes to Joe Brady, the job he's done there. After Ken Dorsey was fired 12 games into last season, they were 6-6, fired Dorsey at the bye. Brady took over. They won 5 straight. This season, of course, they are a force. In my eyes, the favorite. If I had to rank the best teams in the NFL, Bills to me are the best, and the Bills to me are the team that I think will go all the way and win. You look at their offense, they're 7th in total offense, 9th rushing, 9th passing, 2nd in scoring. And I mean, what more is there to say about Josh Allen? He's elite. And this year, right, you went into the offseason, you went into the season with a lot of questions around what this offense would look like with Buffalo, where you don't have Stephon Diggs, right? That was a huge loss. You also lost Gabe Davis, who was another solid piece, and a nice 2 next to Stephon Diggs. So you went into the season with guys like Mac Hollins. You drafted Keon Coleman. You brought in Curtis Samuel. You had some of those guys like that, but no real big names. A lot of questions. You had Khalil Shakir as well, who's really good going into this season, but he's a slot guy. You kind of wondered how much larger could his role be and how much better can he actually be than what he is already right now. And all those questions have been answered. Allen's actually better without Diggs. I mean, he even said it during training camp. I was just glad that he's with guys that don't care about stats, which I don't think is a direct shot at Diggs. I think it's more so Allen himself is just happy he's got, I guess, instead of having one A player, he's got like a bunch of Bs where he can just spread the ball around, not have to worry about this guy complaining, whatever. They, of course, traded for Amari Cooper, who's been a nice boost, even though he missed some time with injury. But on this season, him and Lamar, the 2 favorites right now to win the MVP. You look at Allen's numbers, 291 completions on 456 attempts, 63.8 completion percentage, 3,549 yards, 7.8 yards per completion, 26 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, a 101.2 passer rating, and a 76.8 QBR. You look at where those rank right now in the NFL. 10th in yards, tied for 6th in touchdowns, 9th in passer rating, 2nd in QBR. And that's not even just counting his rushing numbers. This is a guy that combined passing and rushing has 37 touchdowns on the season. 11 of those have come on the ground on 97 carries for 514 yards. He's a huge threat in the red zone. So Allen's been a monster this year. I think what's been most impressive about Josh Allen, one of his biggest knocks has always been the turnovers. Turnover. Even last year, when he started to play down the stretch, and he was in MVP conversation last season, where he had 15 rushing touchdowns and 29 touchdowns, he had 18 interceptions. The year prior, 14 picks, 15 picks, 10 picks, 12 picks. He's only had one season in his career. He's been in the league now. This is his 7th season. He's only had 1 year prior to this where he's at 10 picks. It was in 2019 when he threw 9 interceptions and 20 touchdowns. Since that point, it's been double digit. This year, bearing something unforeseen, he's going to have his career low in interceptions. And it's just the second time in 7 years where he has below 10 interceptions. So I think that's something that has stood out so much from a Jets perspective. That doesn't bode well because they don't get many interceptions. So against a quarterback that hasn't been throwing many, I wouldn't look for too many turnovers tomorrow. But Allen, him and Lamar, I think, are obviously the front runners for MVP. Last time against the Jets, Allen completed 76% of his passes for 215 yards, 8.6 yards per completion, 2 touchdowns, a 127.9 passer rating, and 80.4 QBR. So monster season for him. See what he has in store for tomorrow. Something else to look for. This is a Jets run defense that has actually played a little bit better over the last couple weeks. They were once, I think, 27, 28th. I think I could probably pull out some notes from prior games where the Jets stood from a rush defense perspective. But they've gone up to 16 now, 121.8. It is still a weakness. And the Jets earlier in the year allowed 100 plus yards to Ray Davis. James Cook did not play the last time the Jets played the Bills in week 6. He was not out there. It was the Ray Davis and Ty Johnson show for them. And they still rushed for over 100 yards. Tomorrow, the Jets will get James Cook. He's been a monster this year as well. 182 carries, 928 yards, 5.1 yards per carry, and 14 touchdowns. He's tied for 22nd in the NFL in carries, 15th in yards, and tied for 1st in touchdowns. I think that what's so crazy about Cook is the carries aren't that high, right? The Bills, Brady has installed more of a rushing offense, a rushing attack. Schematically, it's been much stronger than what previous offensive coordinators brought to the table. The Bills haven't had this type of running back in a while in James Cook this good. I know they McCoy many years ago now, but when you look at like Devin Singletary and guys like that, they were never very, very good. They were usually 700, 800 yard backs. James Cook's on his way to his back-to-back 1,000 yard seasons. And he gets the ball a lot more than previous year Bills running backs, even more than last year, but he still doesn't get it a ton in terms of where other players are, where other teams are. But that's what makes him so impressive. He's averaging over 5 yards a carry. He's got 14 touchdowns. He's a guy that is a magnet for the end zone. So, and it's a Jets defense going up against a Bills rushing offense that has 133.5 rush yards per game, 9th in the NFL. It's a Jets defense that's allowing 121 per game. So that could potentially be something there for Buffalo to kind of take over. I would look for tomorrow, especially Quinnen Williams, probably not 100%. Kyron Williams had a big week last week. I would look for tomorrow Cook to probably have a pretty big day. Khalil Shakir is another name. Jets secondary, Sauce banged up. We'll see. Ulbrich didn't really sound overly confident either way that he would play or not. Michael Carter's still doing with the back, so it's DJ Reed. Carter's questionable. Sauce is questionable. You've got Stiggers. You've obviously got Eccles. So we'll see how that all plays out. But Khalil Shakir has been a monster. 73 receptions, which is 17th in the NFL and leads the team. He also has 796 yards. He's also targeted most on the team. His 796 yards lead the team, 10.9 yards per reception, and his 4 touchdowns are second on the team. This is a guy with an incredible ability to pick up yak. He's a 1 to 2 to 3 yard underneath slot guy that can really make guys miss in the open field, and he's very, very physical. So Shakir's a name to look for tomorrow. You know, this is a Jets defense that, again, is banged up a little bit, haven't played well enough. If they struggle to get pressure on Allen, Shakir's probably having a big day. Even if they get pressure on Allen, Shakir can kind of be that dump-off guy. So he's been big this year and somebody to look for tomorrow in terms of the Jets having to stop. They did keep him in check, actually, in the first game. I think he only had like 2 catches for 19 yards. The first time these two teams met back in week 6, of course, so we'll see how that translates tomorrow. And then something else is defense will be tasked with, you know, Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, rather, and Dawson Knox, not Dalton Knox. Dawson Kincaid and Knox. Their tight end duo, 63 receptions on the season between the two, 731 yards, 11.6 yards per reception, 3 touchdowns between the two. I would say it's been an underwhelming season for those two guys, especially Kincaid, a guy that came into the year with very high expectations after a really good rookie season coming out of Utah last year. But again, this is a Jets defense. We saw Tyler Higbee last week score a touchdown in his first game back after dealing with a lot of injuries. The Jets have 2 things the Jets struggle with: stopping tight ends and stopping the run. Both of those things, the Bills do really well. Well, they run the ball really well. Their tight ends haven't been great this year, but they are 2 guys, especially Kincaid, that has the ability to break out any Sunday. And I think that could potentially happen there tomorrow. So we'll see how it all plays out. I'll also say this, Will McDonald, you talk about the stats. Will McDonald, we're still kind of on like sack watch. He's had 10 sacks. He hasn't had a sack in 3 games, though. So we'll see. Final 2 games here. How many more sacks can he rack up? Can he get to 11? Can he get to 12? Does he get to 13? I doubt it at this point, but you never know. He's been a guy this season that's had 3 multi-sack games, including a 3-sack performance against Tennessee. He had 2 against New England, 2 against Seattle 3 weeks ago. So he has the ability. You know, he's picked up 7 of his 10 sacks have come in 3 games this year. So he has the ability to go out there and have big days. So we'll see if we get that tomorrow from Will McDonald. He's kind of been stuck on 10 here for a little while. And that's about it. It's another week. Only one more game preview left. Crazy, we are already here. One more game preview left coming up next week, Jets Dolphins. But before then, we've got Jets Bills here tomorrow afternoon out in Buffalo. I'll be honest, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be very ugly. I think the Bills win this one by a pretty good margin. I don't think this game is particularly close. The Jets defense is just not playing well enough to go on the road and even be competitive against a Bills team that is 12-3, firing on all cylinders. This year, everybody's talking about, they beat the 13-2 Lions and the 15-1 Chiefs. You look at those 2 teams, the Chiefs are 28. The Lions and the Chiefs are 28 and whatever, 28 and 1 or 28 and 2, or I forget. 28 and 1, I think, against 28 and 1 against every other NFL team and 28 and 2 against the Bills. Is that or something like that? They're something like that. I don't know. They're 28 and 2 against the Bills or something. I don't know. They've lost 2 games. They've lost 3 games combined. The Lions and the Chiefs. 2 of them have come against the Bills. So, Bills right now feels like they're the top team. It does. And I think they win tomorrow. Bills 31, Jets 17. That's, I think, my pick. I think they cover the 9.5. I think they win by 2 scores. I think Rodgers gets his 500th touchdown. I think the Jets muster up a little bit on offense, but I don't think nearly enough. I think this is really just a game where the Bills just kind of take over on offense and put up a 30-plus point game and kind of continue that trend, which, by the way, I have to reveal this one more stat because it kind of goes along with the score prediction. 31-17 Bills, I think, win this game. That's my prediction. Here's an interesting stat. This was courtesy of Matt O'Leary earlier this week. So credit to him on this one. The Bills have put up 30-plus points in 11 of 15 games this year. That's 73.3%. The Jets have put up 30-plus points in 11 of their last 89 games. That's 12.4%. So just shows you the difference. And not only shows you the difference in the two franchises and where they're headed or where they've been, but also shows you the difference in these two offenses. So Bills 31, Jets 17. Bills get to 30 points for the 12th time this season. Jets defense struggles. And everybody will be just looking at Tankathon once again after this one. That's the feeling I'm getting here. So we'll be back tomorrow right after the game, as always, for our post-game pod. Second to last post-game pod of the season. Sadly, that's where we are. Just look ahead, finish these two games, stay healthy, and move on to a crucial off season. So stay tuned. We'll be back tomorrow. Until next time, as always, appreciate you all so much. Make sure to please like and subscribe. JETS, 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 Jets.